Hello, neighbor, and welcome once again to another edition of Sound Off Louisiana. And we are so thrilled to come to you. And let me start off by saying that I want to express our sincere appreciation to all of our subscribers and to our site visitors for us recently having broken the record for one-day viewership of a single video within it being published. We got almost 400 hits on the first day on the video of St. Martin Parish Deputy Bailey Romero, and in particularly, Romero just happened to be the deputy who was called out. But I think what garnered such attention on that video was the words of Blake Dubrock in what he is saying that Chester Cedars, St. Martin Parish president, told him in terms of all the measures that they would go through to have Billy Broussard arrested. He'd go straight to jail if he goes on his own property after a restraining order was signed by a judge. And I think that speaks volumes about people viewing that type of infringement on your own individual rights to own property and enjoy the fruits of the property. And it goes against, quite frankly, everything that this country was founded upon. And I think that's why. Now, the last I checked, the video's now been up for almost 3 days, and it's very close to, it's either 800 or 900 hits. And I want to thank everyone because it is work to gather these videos, whether it be from an external source like the St. Martin Parish Sheriff's Office or otherwise. And I thank you so much for your dedication in making it worthwhile for our efforts to do that. Now, moving into today's Sound Off Louisiana segment, many of you will recall we did an extensive series, it was about 8 episodes, with regard to former Alcohol and Tobacco Commissioner Murphy Painter. And we're going to give you the link for the 8th episode, and then down at the bottom of 8 it has the previous 7. And the reason I'm coming to you today, and you will have seen it in the headlines, and Mr. Painter made brief mention of the fact that there would be an upcoming court hearing, and that must be about the 25th, and I'm probably conservative, court hearing since the litigation was filed 11 years ago. But this one was an important one because there were 5 or 6 exceptions being asserted by various parties with regard to the Office of Inspector General in Stevens Street to basically get Mr. Painter's lawsuit tossed. And I'm going to explain what happened in the court hearings, and it turned out to be hearings, because I think it's worthwhile, and I think it can provide a valuable lesson about what all happens whenever you, excuse me, whenever you sue a governmental agency. I mean, it's just, it's problematic. Excuse me. So the court hearing was scheduled for July the 25th, and it did transpire. Judge Fields came in a little bit before. It was Wilson Fields who was to hear these exceptions. And he came in a little bit before court was to convene, and as a courtesy to everyone, he let them know that there was a problem, in that his court reporter, whom he said he has had for over 20 years, and this was only the second day that she had ever had to call in, you know, with no notice ahead of time, saying, look, I cannot make it in today. So that's an exemplary record to go 20 plus years and only have 2 occasions that you had need to, on an emergency type basis, I can't come in. But he said that that posed a problem because the court system previously had 21 court reporters, and that enabled floaters to where when something like this happened, they could cover it. He said that's no longer the case. They're down to 13 court reporters. And so what they did is they contacted one who said that she could come in, but it would be about an hour. So Judge Fields offered everyone to either reschedule or hang around for an hour. And everyone opted, hey, we're here, we're going to hang around for an hour. So we all hung around for an hour. And as is the case, she did show up. Turned out she had to come all the way from New Orleans. And it actually took a little longer than an hour. It took about an hour and 30 minutes. But at any rate, she got there and everything got set up. And as is the case with most all judges, they will always typically, unless a lawyer has something that a conflict, that, Your Honor, I really need to be placed higher up on the docket. But as a general rule, if that is not the case, judges will typically call the oldest matters first. And so you heard me say a moment ago that this matter was filed 11 years ago, which means it was the oldest matter, and therefore it was called first. And there were about 6 exceptions, give or take. We're going to give you a link to Judge Fields' the judgments that were recorded on all 6. Give or take, it may be off, 4, 5, 6, anyway, everybody had different exceptions trying to get this thing tossed, whether it be res judicata, no cause of action, yada, yada. And so you can imagine now the environment, and you've got about 20 items on the docket, okay? So this is just one of 20. We're an hour and a half late getting started. And so Judge Fields allowed all 6 of those, give or take, exceptions to be argued. And of course, when I say argued, you've got the initial argument posed by, in this case, either an OIG attorney or a Department of Revenue attorney or an attorney for one of the individuals. Then you have the response from, in this case, Mr. Painter's attorney, Al Robert, and then there's a brief period for a response to that. So you're talking about 3 different segments per exception, okay? And obviously that's going to take up quite a bit of time. And so Judge Fields did start to nip that in the bud by letting each one know that, okay, you've got 2 minutes or you've got 3 minutes, because things would just drag on forever if he didn't do that, I guess. So Judge Fields has quite a sense of humor at times too. So as this finally wraps up, because you're talking about the volleying and so forth of all of these exceptions, that ended up taking about probably 40 or 45 minutes. And so Judge Fields, with his sense of humor, let everyone else in the courtroom know that, okay, he said, now these 2 have managed to consume all of the time that I had allotted for this morning for rules, so unfortunately everyone else is going to have to reschedule. And of course they thought he was serious. Even I thought he was serious. Then he paused and said, now y'all know I'm just kidding around with y'all. And so they all breathed a sigh of relief, like, whew, Lord, glad we didn't sit through all of this, hour and a half and then another hour for the first matter, all to be told, okay, come back later. But when they did wrap up the arguments, Judge Fields said, okay, look, this is a fairly complicated matter, and so I will issue my ruling 1 week from today on August the 1st in open court. So, okay, good enough. Everybody, we all go home, come back on August the 1st, which is 1 week later on a Monday. So we all show back. When I say we, I have done my best, and I don't think I missed a single Murphy Painter hearing. We all show up on August the 1st, and Judge Fields calls out all the docket, and Murphy Painter's case was not called. And so Judge Fields said, okay, if you are in this courtroom and I did not call your docket, let me know at this time. And so Al Robert stood and let him know that, hey, our matter was not called. And I'm going to go back in time because I do want to focus on one thing. And forgive me for this, I'm going back now to July 25th. When the OIG attorney and others, and I don't remember which one, was arguing, when I say arguing, I mean closing oral arguments. And Judge Fields stopped her in mid-sentence and said, now, whoa, how did this end up in my courtroom? because it's 11 years old and this is the first hearing he's going to hear on the matter. And so she said, well, Your Honor, this case was originally assigned to Judge Janice Clark. And he said, uh-huh. And he said, and she reached retirement age. And he said, okay, so how did it wind up in my courtroom? And she said, well, Your Honor, it was originally reassigned to Judge Don Johnson. And he said, okay. And said, and then she said, and Your Honor, I did not file this. I did not file this. But there was a motion filed. The reality is Mr. Painter filed it. There was a motion for Judge Johnson to be recused from the matter. And so that perked Judge Fields' interest. And he said, well, why was he recused? And he said, well, my handy minute clerk here has just gotten me the order. And so he read it and he said, well, it says for him to be recused, but it doesn't give any reason why. And so Al Robert had to gently choose his wording on this. And so he said, well, Your Honor, it turns out that when Mr. Painter served with the Ascension Parish Sheriff's Office, he had occasion to have interaction with both Judge Johnson and his brother Ron, and therefore we sought recusal. And he said, and so I wound up with it. And they said, yes, Your Honor. He said, well, okay, it's in my courtroom, so continue the arguments. I apologize that I had to go back in time to cover that. So now we are on August the 1st, okay? And Al Robert has made it known that, hey, Your Honor, you didn't call our docket number. And he said, well, okay, what is your case? And so he called the number, but he said Murphy Painter. And he said, oh, okay, Murphy Painter. And he said, Your Honor, we argued all of these exceptions last week, and you told us to return back to court for this morning that you would issue your ruling. And so Judge Fields said, y'all argued all of this before me last week? And they had to remind it, yes, Your Honor, we argued all of this before you last week. And he said, well, it didn't manage to make it onto today's docket. So y'all will just have to return back on August the 8th, and I will render my ruling in open court on August the 8th. Oh, okay. Guess we can consider August the 1st a false alarm. So off we all go. And so we return on August the 8th, at which time it was properly on the docket, and at which time Judge Fields wasted no time whatsoever in letting everyone know that he was granting all of the exceptions. And I do mean all. He was granting all of the exceptions, which meant that, or means that, Murphy Painter's case right now, his civil litigation, which has been ongoing for 11 years, is officially dismissed. In one of the instances, specifically Shane Evans, who was a former investigator at Alcohol and Tobacco Commission, the attorney for him was seeking attorney's fees. That's the only one, but let me just explain how that was possible to do, because normally you only get court costs assessed unless there is a specific statute that permits you to recover attorney's fees. Well, according to Code of Civil Procedure 971, and briefly what that is, Code of Civil Procedure 971 is intended to cause people not to have to fear being sued when you make commentary about a public official. No question about it, with Murphy Painter being the commissioner of ATC, he was a public figure, no question about that. And so they were essentially arguing that Shane Evans had the right of free speech to make the statements that he made about Mr. Painter, even, I guess, as false as they may be, because Mr. Painter clearly has made it clear, and we're going to give you the application for the search warrant. If you want to go back to, I believe it is episode 3, you can see Mr. Painter go into detail about the falsities that he says are contained in that, application for search warrant that was executed and drafted by Shane Evans. But the matter did ultimately wind its way all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. They declined to hear writs on it. And so Judge Fields, in granting that motion, he said he was familiar with Code of Civil Procedure 971 and the fact that it allows you to obtain attorney's fees. He did state that he felt like the attorney's fees that had been requested for Shane Evans, which they itemized $27,000, he said he deemed those to be excessive, and so he was going to award $9,000 in attorney's fees. So that is the way the Murphy Painter matter was resolved to that point. Thereafter, I will let you know that Mr. Painter's attorney, Al Robert, on Friday of last week, September the 2nd, he filed a motion for a new trial. And in it, we're going to give you the 12-page memorandum. You're welcome to look at as much or as little as you would like. In the body of our Sound Off feature, I'm going to highlight some of it. But I chose to do this particular episode by video, number one, because I just didn't feel like typing a bunch of stuff in front of a keyboard. And number two, I also wanted to express the appreciation for the viewership on that Bailey Romero video. But basically, Mr. Robert itemizes exception by exception as to why the court being Judge Fields, basically, got it wrong. And on one instance, he said that Judge Fields lacked the ability to see the forest for the trees, and that's a quote. And we'll bring that out as one of the items that is highlighted. So the order has not been signed to fix a hearing date with regard to Mr. Painter's motion for a new trial. We'll just have to see how that pans out once I know the date for that hearing, and we'll certainly attend and we'll give you the results. But I like to always follow things up, and there are some other cases we're going to need to follow up with you on as well. But because we went to such great lengths to do a 8-part series on Mr. Painter, I wanted to update everybody on where things stand on his civil litigation. Like I said, you're welcome to, we're going to provide you with links for each of the judgments. Now, one of the judgments, if you go into it, you'll see is not signed by Judge Fields. That was as of the day I printed it. He subsequently signed it. Take my word for it. I have laid eyes on it. He signed it. The others are all signed. So that will bring you up to speed on Murphy Painter, and you're welcome to look at as much as you'd like of the motion for the new trial. We're going to give it to you. You're welcome to look at the judgments, the wording of each of them, if you would be so inclined. I've pretty well told you what happened in the court hearing, so I'm not going to sit behind a keyboard and type out what I've just told to you on this camera. So thank you so much for your dedication. And let me just say this. We're going to have, from what I'm told, I've made the public records request, and we're going to have some more very interesting videos emanating from the St. Martin Parish Sheriff's Office. And I want to thank those subscribers and visitors who alerted me within an hour some of the videos we put out. I say, you need to ask for this. And we've asked for it. I'm anxious to see it, I'll tell you that for sure. And I believe, trusting on what I've been told, it's going to be something to behold. Thank you once again. I hope everyone enjoyed a very happy Labor Day, and we look forward to bringing you another Sound Off Louisiana episode real soon. Thank you so much.